Ironically, the same society where people tell me how much they love my hair is the same society where we have to have conversations how man ethnic hairstyles uphold these notions of white supremacy. Yes, there are states that are passing laws to stop natural hair discrimination, but damn, in 2020, we still having these conversations? As you listen to this video, I want you to ask yourself, is your understandings of professionalism wrapped in notions of white supremacy? Is it? We know that California and New York were the first states to outlaw this type of discrimination based on hair texture. Shout out to everybody with that 4C. See, it's easy to pocket watch black women and chastise them for how much they spending on beauty supplies, but the harder way is to talk about this historical analysis we have. Many black women say they have felt pressure for decades to use excessive heat, chemical relaxers, and weave to conform to European standards of straight hair. In 2017 alone, black consumers spent over $400 million on hair care. The question is, what brings us to this? Why must there be laws that tell people I can grow my hair like this? Why? Contrary to popular belief, professionalism simply boils down to what pertains to your profession. And somehow in this country, we've been convinced that our hairstyle and hair texture sometimes is always already unprofessional. Hair discrimination, hair exclusion, hair biasness. These notions of inferiority that's inscribed onto one's hair literally allows for people to think that black hair in the natural state is unkept, is dirty, is nasty, it needs to be clean. These are ways that professionalism gets weaponized against this type of texture hair. Are you conscious of when black hair violates the dress code and how notions of professionalism is used to justify these violations of this hair? Y'all know my motto was education is elevation, right? But what does it mean when we have a trend or a pattern of black girls being pushed out of the education elevation process because of their hair? In recent years, black girls have been sent home for wearing braids, dreads, hair wraps, and even wearing their hair naturally. Hairstyles and suspensions, huh? Oh yeah, this is story time of when black hair violates the dress code, you feel me? Raising teenage girls is a tough job. Raising black teenage girls as white parents is even a harder job. Aaron and Colleen Cook knew when they adopted Maya and Deanna, it was going to be something a little different. This also brings me to the actual term transracial. Contrary to popular belief, transracial was a term that was originally about adoption. It has nothing to do with people picking and choosing their race. It's actually when one family of one race adopts people of another race. Back to this hair thing though. When these two adopted these young girls, I don't know if they knew they was opting into the matrix of hair politics. In the educational space, when black hair violates the dress code, that gets us to the zero tolerance policies, and this leads us to thinking about how black students are disproportionately impacted by these suspension rates. What does black hair have to do with that? Research shows they enforce a marginalization of black girls in schools, which can, in practice, criminalize their black identity, all based off the natural hair that comes from their scalp. History.
Have you ever heard of tie-on laws? In Louisiana in 1786, the sumptuary law was enacted under Governor Esteban Rodriguez Miro. These were to be worn by free and slave Creole women of African ancestry and was thought to be a badge of dishonor. And what was the reason for this? Black women's beauty was perceived as a threat to white women because they were attracting white, French, and Spanish men. So basically, as a big fuck you to these laws, they used unique wrapping styles, beautiful fabrics, jewels, ribbons, and other things, which accentuated their beauty even more. In recent media, we had Angela Bassett playing Marie Laveau, the Queen of Voodoo from New Orleans, in American Horror Story Coven, and she is wearing a tie-on. The tie-on laws were removed in the early 1800s. However, the style has kind of stuck and become a part of black culture, as you can see here, Queen Bee wearing one herself.
Huh? You say, how does black hair reflect black history? I'm glad you asked. For context, in early African civilizations, hairstyle can indicate a person's family background, their status, even their tribe. See, according to the journalist and author of a book about the history of black hair, she says that just about everything about a person's identity can be learned from looking at their hair. It literally adds more uniqueness to that 1700 time when black women were required by law to cover their hair because too many French and English and Spanish men were breaking their necks to see them black women hairstyles. You know, it literally was a threat to the status quo. And though I agree with India Ari, we are not our hair, the story of us can be told through the story of our hair. After slavery was abolished and the plantation was pushed into the prison, many of our ancestors felt compelled to smoothen their hair and texture to fit in easier. See, but just like after emancipation and now, we still have to ask ourselves, why are black people still punished for our hair? We all should be exploring how black hair is repressed and regulated legally here in the U.S. Shout out to the barbers and the beauticians, man.